Sound.
Busy doing stuff. Oh, it went off for you. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. How beautiful you all look. I'm so impressed that the cold didn't deter you. But for you to know, we have like 70 people at home, all warm and snuggly, but hopefully you're warm and snuggly as well. I'm Judy Maddox. I'm chair of our Western North Carolina Sierra Club. So glad to have you. I want to invite you every first Wednesday. Now, no, this is not the first Wednesday, but it will be February 5th and March 5th. Our next program in February will be with Drew Jones of Climate International, talking about, oh my gosh, international climate programs and what we can do to lower our climate footprint. And he says the top 10 reasons to be hopeful for the climate. Yes, and I think we all need that. And again, it will be same time, same place, right here, as well as Zoom and in your living room. And in March, we have a wonderful international birder, Simon Thompson. If any of you guys are birders, he's from England, but he's been here for decades. He moved back, but he's going to show us beautiful pictures and, of course, talk to us about beautiful birds and the effect of climate, but also the hopeful and the beautiful side of birding and climating. So, what is happening tonight? To begin with, surprise, surprise, you're in Ollie. You're at the Reuters Center. And we are partners, and we are very gracious to have the support of this wonderful student tech. His name is Walter. Yay, Walter. And as you know, Ollie and the Reuters Center has a great mission and partners with all kinds of wonderful programs. So please look at their catalog. We are Sierra Club, and we are three-layered. There is a national Sierra Club, and out on the front table where you signed in, there is a little super bonus where you could sign up for $15. Wow. And National will give you a magazine every month and will tell you wonderful programs. You can go internationally on trips, on tours. The second layer is the state chapter in Raleigh. And you get footnotes online. And one of the things that they work on hard is the coast. And you may know about wood chips. There's a strange concept from England and Europe that they can come over here and cut down our forests and turn them into wood chips and burn them up, and that's sustainable and renewable. Wrong. So we're trying very hard to get that in any way we can, a demise or to outlaw it with government if we can. And of course, Western North Carolina is here. And if you're not signed up, please go to our website, which is wncSierraClub.org. Very simple, just WNC Sierra Club, and sign up down at the bottom. And what that gets you is a free newsletter, e-newsletter, that you can unsubscribe every other Saturday, telling you about these programs, telling you who to vote for, telling you who to lobby, telling you what letters to write, and telling you about cleanups. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So please join us. Please like us on Facebook. Please like us on Instagram. Please like us anywhere you can like us. Okay. We want to acknowledge with great respect that we are on ancestral land with the Cherokee, and they have kept this land in great promise for generations and generations. So we are in honor. Our programs are every first Wednesday. They are on Zoom and they are in person. Please go to our website, and if you get our e-newsletter, you'll get the links and the information there. All right, so we're having 1 to 2 hikes every month, and the hike this month is Sunday. So if you're interested, it will be at Bent Creek. And Ed Maggot, Ed, are you here? You want to stand up? And here is his contact, and this is the man who will be leading you, and please sign up with him so that you make contact. Ed, you want to come up a minute because I'm going to turn it over to you for 1 second. We have a Kids Adventure Club, which Ed is leading right now, and we're asking you guys to volunteer. This is for kids pretty much from maybe inner city, from community. We're taking them to the Arboretum. We're petting snakes. How many of you guys have petted a snake? Yeah, look at you. And wouldn't it be fun to have this kid next to you and pet a snake with him? All right, come tell us about it.
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, what she said is exactly right. We are not going on major outdoor expeditions. We're just trying to get kids outdoors with their friends to have fun and feel like it's a place that they belong, that they want to go back to, so they can learn a few things about nature and about themselves. We work with city schools. We work with city centers, so we have afternoon programs. We have programs on days off from school and in the summer. If you'd like to volunteer, well, my email's gone now, but you can look on the website. And if you're thinking, oh, well, I've never really worked with kids, I'm not a teacher, I'm not an outdoor instructor, it doesn't matter. We need folks who just want to come out and learn with the kids and have great experiences. So get in touch with me to find out more. We'd love to have you involved. Thanks.
Well, okay. I want to give you some good news. This one right here, we might actually have a Buncombe County park. Would that be just too cool? So $4.5 million was authorized December 28th, just over your left shoulder, for Deaverville Mountain, which is just right around the corner. And that in combination with Southern Appalachian Highlands, and they had another huge amount of money, but it's not a done deal. They've got until, look at that, March 2026 to pull it all together, and hopefully it will, and hopefully we'll have the park. So it's very, very cool. And as you can see, the previous plans were to create a subdivision, but now we'll have a hiking and a birding park. So very cool. Okay, so all of you guys want to volunteer, right? We're all in this together. We're all going to pull together. We're all going to heal after Helene. So this is 2 opportunities. Mountain True, as you can see, they're doing river cleanups. You guys are ready, right? It's 15 degrees out. You're going to hop on your canoe and you're going to clean up the river, right? No, right now they're doing land cleanups, but I have a really cool thing to explain to you. They are doing live staking. I bet you've never heard that term. What they have to do, it has to be in the winter. They're trying to restore stream beds, which, as you know, have been just beaten up and they're crumbling and they're creating sediment in the river. What is happening is you are going to help if you'll volunteer. And right there is how you volunteer. And this is the young man's name. You're going to clip off a branch of a living tree that is hybrid. I mean, that is asleep for the winter. Thank you. And you're going to take this and you're going to jam it into a stream bed. And you think, really, this is going to work? But golly gee, when spring comes around, it puts out roots, it puts out shoots, and you got a tree, and it's holding the bank. Is that just too cool? So you might take a picture of that if you're interested in. The other people that are also doing this is Riverlink. And they likewise are doing live staking. But they have another really cool thing. It's called Adopt a Stream. And maybe this is you right here, right now. If you have private property and you have a little creek, a little kind of nothing on your land, um, they will help you. They will bring out volunteers, which will be us, and they will help, or we will restore it. We will do live stocking. We will do cleanup, we will haul off trash, and they will provide materials. So please consider volunteering both with Mountain True and with Riverlink, and that will be on our site, but clearly their sites as well. So I already told you in December the 10 top reasons for being hopeful. I actually got on a plane with this man, Drew Jones. I was on the way to Oklahoma. He was on the way to China, excuse me. And there was an international conference that he was a part of and talking about what can China do to help the world. And I think he's been to all the United Nations international conferences. So he also has this great simulator where we put our heads together and say, you know, what if we do this? It will lower our climate footprint. So he's a very exciting person. And as I told you in March, it will be birding. So this is why you are here, and I'm going to introduce our three wonderful speakers. Following me is Dr. Steve Norman of the U.S. Forest Service, and he's going to show us the Pisgah Forest up close and personal and what has happened to the forest, which will hopefully we'll make it through the presentation. Following him will be Keith Aiken, who is our urban forester. He likewise, I think, has some drone pictures showing what happened, the swath straight through us from Biltmore Park, Biltmore Forest, Craven Gap, and just and is going to be talking about how to replant, what to replant. Like you don't want to just replant willy-nilly, and he's going to talk about that. And wrap up will be Allison Ormsby with the Tree Protection Task Force, and she wants every one of you in the room to volunteer for the tree protection. It is what it says. We need to protect our trees. So thank you for coming, and welcome now to Dr. Steve. Here you are, Dr. Steve.
I was counting people because that's what I do as part of my day job. I count things. I've worked for the Forest Service Southern Research Station across the street on Weaver by the Chancellor's office now since here in Nashville since about 2007, which means enough time to really appreciate this place. And for the most part, my work is related to aspects of wildland fire, especially after 2016. But this is a way to not just address fire, but other very important things like water and wind and a little bit of earth, movement of all three. So I'd like to acknowledge my colleague, Bill Christie, who works with me across the street. This picture is from the Blue Ridge Parkway. There's a lot of blown down trees. When that's open, everyone's going to be shocked. There's some places that everyone needs to go to. I'm not encouraging people to create traffic jams, but we have some places where the blowdown isn't just small. It's really extraordinary. It's humbling. And the big question we all have is why? We have a lot of hurricanes come through all the time. Every few years, wasn't that long ago, we had Fred. Helene came up very aggressively, very quickly from the Gulf of Mexico on 9/27, just a few months ago. It hit us with a fury, with a lot of rain and a lot of wind. We saw things that we only knew in black and white, like this. Who remembers 1916? This is 2024 here. Right behind one of my favorite places to sing karaoke at the Getaway Bar, which is no longer there. Sad, but true. The important point I want to make here is that it wasn't just the rain from Helene. It was the rain from Helene plus this precursive rain, this antecedent rain. That's what happens over and over again. It's happened in 1916. It happened in 2003. It happened here again. It happens a lot. It's not enough to just have a hurricane. It's the rain that comes in the days before. This shows how much rain fell and where from NOAA over the course of really 3 days. It says 48 hours, but it's really over the course of 3 calendar days. Mount Mitchell, you see in the middle in white, they got a lot there. A lot south of Black Mountain towards Chimney Rock. It explains a lot of the landslides there. But it's kind of in the pink and in the white zone, it's kind of a long linear band, and that's because the rain hit the Blue Ridge Escarpment, and that really led to a lot of excess precipitation come out because of the effects of topography. It might be a little hard to see, but on the right, there's different station data. On the left, it was modeled from radar, but there's 2 columns there on the right, and one is the 2 days before, and the second is the amount of precipitation from the event. And if you notice, the majority precipitation actually happened before the 27th, with the exception of one station. And it was the wet soil, we think, that led to so many trees being uprooted. That precursor, that predecessor rain is really key to understanding what extraordinary thing happened. The other thing that happened is we had some vicious wind. Wind is really hard to document after the fact. We have stations, a lot of our stations lost their power, just like I did at home. So we don't have a full record, and it changes. Some of these gusts would happen just suddenly, right? In the course of a 10-second period, and then they'd be gone. How do you capture that streaming data? And short answer is we don't very well, but just looking at this map across Western North Carolina and the Southern Apps, you can see some places, like right there in the middle, 106-mile-per-hour gust on the top of Mount Mitchell. It's like, wow. 87, if you notice in the lower left, that's on Frying Pan Lookout Tower on the Blue Ridge Parkway past the Pisgah Inn. That's a gust that exceeds the hurricane force wind. No surprise. Trees blew over. A lot of these other areas weren't quite so high, but the actual wind speeds are higher than this. Most of the wind's coming from the southeast, as you can see in the lower right. That's the Asheville Airport windrows. And that matters because that changes where the exposure is. So we could say, yeah, you get a lot of rain, you get a lot of wind, we're going to have a lot of damage. But, and you can predict that just from weather station data, or you can do what I do. I count things, I measure things, and I use remote sensing, satellites to do that. So this is our best and loveliest map so far of where there was change in the forest condition because of Hurricane Helene. This is early October, so there's a lot of caveats because October is during this thing called fall, but it's the best insight we got. That's at 30-foot or 10-meter resolution, so it's really high resolution. Most of what you see is yellow. A lot of that is an actual damage. A lot of that is just leaf stripping because winds tend to rip the leaves off trees. But northeast of Asheville, you see a lot of red. Huge areas of that landscape were severely damaged by this measure. And we'd think, well, the simple, most logical thing is, well, you get a lot of rain, you get a lot of wind, you put them together, and you have a lot of tree damage. And so, not to overwhelm people with complex mathematics, I'd be the last person to do that. But you put the rain together, maybe multiply it times wind, we'd expect that to give us some sense of where there's blowdown. Well, do we see that? Yeah, sort of, in a way, step back way. But there are exceptions. There's areas southwest of Asheville on the Pisgah Ranger District, all the way over past Franklin, way over here. This is high elevation area where we really didn't have a lot of damage. I show a little change. That's probably from leaf stripping. High elevation areas start their senescence earlier than places down here. But even around Bent Creek, you can see tulip poplar stands that just gave up their leaves as soon as they heard rumors of wind, because that's what they do. They're early senescers, right? That's not really damage. It's not really structural damage. It's leaf stripping. And to know for sure how bad that is, we really have to wait until summer. There's a few other exceptions that are just bizarre, like Mount Mitchell over here. We know Mount Mitchell had incredible wind and incredible amounts of rain. I was up there. There's not many trees down there. What's going on? Curious minds want to know. This curious mind still doesn't know, but it's a bizarre thing when you think about it. Zooming in, this is what our map looks like. So here we are, where are we? Asheville's in the lower left. Mount Mitchell is pretty close to the middle. Blue means it's not really changed. And notice how much blue there is there. Partly that's because there's conifers in some places, but even the deciduous forest doesn't show a lot of change. If we go a little bit to the east, Linville Gorge is on the right. Spruce Pine is just left of center up here. And you see there's a lot of change in the upper slopes that face, not a surprise, toward the southeast. That's the way the wind's coming from. Some of that's leaf stripping, but a lot of that's really bad damage. The places that we know best, a place like here in Linville, you can see all along that Keesler Highway, it's got a red thing. You can easily see what that looks like on Facebook. And also down here, just west of the river, in the lower slope, in this richer cove forest within one of our best wilderness areas, massive damage, massive damage. There's a lot of places here where we have extreme damage on the east side, and then in the lee slope, in the protected slope, we don't have that so much. It's fascinating, but understandable. One of the big shockers, the size of these patches. Some of them are huge. Some of them go thousands of feet from the upper slope all the way down to the creek and then a little bit more. This is Shope Creek just east of us, near Riceville. And that's water, that's the creek. And it continues this way all the way up to the Blue Ridge Parkway in the distance and then beyond, all the way up to the ridgeline. You see that over and over again across the landscape to the northeast of us. Here's a view from Elk Mountain. What do we see? We see a lot of leaf stripping. Sometimes the trees have not only been leaf stripped, the leaves are now in Tennessee. The tree is laying on its side. There's partial crown damage. Sometimes the crown has been nipped off completely by the wind and the bowl is still there. Sometimes it's a low snap, but surprisingly common, we've got these big, massive areas of uprooted trees. And again, the working hypothesis is very wet soils that destabilize the trees, and so the heavy wind easily toppled them. We're working in the landscape scale here. So the measures that we're after more than anything else are things like the size of the gap. And these are huge. Some of these are really very large, over 100 hectares. And what's interesting, even more so than fire, sometimes you have massive things. It looks just like some giant Bigfoot came through and decided to lay down. You know, sometimes you see in a meadow where a deer is laid down, right? Everything's laid down. Well, imagine that at scale. These trees just are all laid down. Sometimes they're just like perfectly lined up with each other the way they fell. Thanks. And sometimes it's really complex because the winds change over the course of the storm's passage. Sometimes there's remnant trees. A lot of the remnant trees are tulip poplar. A lot of the remnant trees are dead ash trees that had no leaves. So they're still standing. A lot of these are ash. We're curious to see what this is going to look like in coming years. We've got small gaps. Some of these are very close to here. The one on the upper left is across the street behind me in the UNCA woodlot. The one on the lower left is right at the junction of Town Mountain Road and the Blue Ridge Parkway. There's a lot of fuel now laying on the ground immediately below, downhill of that home. And there's a lot of homes on hillsides that are in that situation now. That's a major concern. On the right, literally 100, 200 yards above us, on the path you take to the observatory, a huge white pine patch blow down. It's all over. Oops, go back. So what we tried to do is high grade. You know, we're trying to measure this at scale over this huge multi-state area, all the damage. And you know, this technology we have allows us to look at change continuously, but with the assessment, we were able to high grade it, find what we call the major wind damage. And I've got 4 colors there. One is pink. Pink is major damage that we have high confidence in it's to the deciduous type. If it's red, it's conifer, very serious damage, like what we see up in Roan Mountain. And then the white is very likely, almost always, comparably destroyed stands. And if it's gray, it's possible. So it's hard to know for sure what we have, and there's a little bit of uncertainty. So this classification is not just how bad the damage is, but also how confident we are in that assessment. And what it ignores, the way we've done it is a lot of the areas of lighter damage that's really from leaf stripping that also includes small gaps, and that adds up to the acreage for sure, but in a different way and less reliably. So we've just set that more difficult part aside. Here's a view. It's kind of tricky for those of you who used to look at a map where north is to the north. Asheville's to the upper right. This is Lynn Cove here, Webb Cove. Blue Ridge Parkway comes like this around here. And this is our continuous map of change. You can see those upper slopes are hit hard. And this is the major slope. So the wind's coming basically from this direction, from the upper right down. And we see a lot of these slopes that face the wind to the southeast that are hit hard. Every once in a while, these little slop overs, because there's downbursts. We can map that incredible wind complexity really well. This is what it looks like. So my last slide is just an estimate of this major damage by county. And it's a little different than what you may have seen that the state produced in October with a very rapid assessment. This is based on 3 months of work. And it only includes the major damage, the stuff that we're most confident with. There's a tremendous number of acres that have small, isolated scatter blowdowns. And they're harder for us to map. In addition, this includes not a single acre of the urban forest. So Keith is here to tell us about that. Notice the Buncombe County, the red on the right is the percentage of the trees in that, or stands or forest in that county that's non-urban that was lost. Buncombe's lost about just under 17% of its forest. Look where it's worse. These are ranked in order of acres. Mitchell, northern Mitchell County is in a really bad way. The Ashe County is on the top, but notice that most of that is in the type I call possible. So that's that's probably, the quality of that is probably less. So that's kind of where I'm at on these summary slides. This is an ongoing project. Appreciate the opportunity to talk, be here tonight, and I'm very curious to hear the other speakers.
We're going to get to that.
Fine with that? Is that gonna block anything? I can't seem to get rid of the block part.
Don't worry. As long as, but I'm just hitting the space bar to advance, right?
You should hit the arrows.
The arrows. Okay, those arrows, front and back. All right.
Yep.
Cool. Fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Keith Aiken, urban forester, city of Asheville. You asked about this tree right here. Has anybody ever seen this tree? Anybody ever been near this tree? Fantastic. So this is where I was on September 25th. I was coming back from out west on a big tree tour. I was gathering up a bunch of energy, you know, visiting the redwoods, the sequoias. I had plans to hit so many other spaces, and for some reason on September 23rd, I felt some sort of weird vibe, some kind of tremor in the force. So I don't know what caused me to, I was just like, I need to get home. And I had been following the storm when I was out west on the TV and that sort of thing. So anyway, any idea what species this is? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry. I'm kind of a mover. Is there a headset by chance? Yeah, no, I was gonna stand here, but I'm a mover.
Oh, it's already on. Okay. Try speaking
All
through
right,
it.
Just 1, 2, test.
For now?
Test 1, 2. All right, this is a little funky. All right, so yeah, I'm pretty much a mover. I like to move around the thing. So once again, this tree here, September 25th, I took this picture in front of the tree. At that point, I knew it was raining really hard here. The next day, September 26th, I did get a debrief from the emergency management for the state of Kentucky. A friend of mine who's a good buddy of mine who lives in Louisville, and he told me that they were calling up crews for Western North Carolina. So I started getting really scared the next day after this photo. Anyway, so you've had a chance to look at that foliage a little bit. What's this tree? Anybody? White oak? Magnolia? Huh? So this is this is Owensboro, Kentucky. If anybody's real quick on their phone, you could probably figure this tree out real quick. So this is the biggest specimen I've ever seen in my life. And when I was coming back from my tree tour, I was staying at a friend's house in Owensboro, and she was like, "Have you ever seen our tree?" I was like, "No, I don't. I've never even heard of this tree." So anyway, that's a sassafras. Once again, sassafras. Biggest sassafras I've ever seen in my life. I was so just amazed at this. But essentially, this is the oldest in the world. This plaque here was probably, a few years old, probably 10, 20 years old. So That tree was no longer 100 feet tall, but it was definitely the biggest sassafras tree that I've ever stood next to in my entire life. So, as I go through these slides here, I have a lot of pictures of Asheville, and sort of some folks had sent us some pictures, different images and that sort of thing, and I'll call those out when we get down to them. One thing I want to kind of note here, is anybody familiar with the acronym ANTS? ANTS, does anybody know what ANTS are? No one? Automatic negative thoughts. Okay, so as we go through these slides, just be thinking about that, because you're gonna, probably have a little bit of emotion in here. I had a lot of emotion. I still don't, I don't feel comfortable even looking at these slides anymore, because they just bring just sorrow to me. So anyway, as we go through, just know that. Yeah, anybody know what kind of tree that is? Or can guess what the family is? What family of tree is this? What would we most likely see from this size of a tree on the ground during Helene? It does have an acorn. So just to tell you, so this is a red oak. That end on that tree right there, that's a 45 diameter end on that tree, and that is actually from the ground to the top where that was cut is 16 feet. So it was a very large tree. It was actually, let's see, this tree was actually laying across here, completely across the road. It was blocking the road. For some reason, it fell directly in between two buildings. There was probably about a 20-foot gap between the buildings. That crown fell right in between those two buildings, took some siding off one of the buildings, crushed a car that was in the middle of the buildings. I mean, completely flattened it. This was in our Emma community. This is definitely a family who wouldn't have had the funds or the resources to get this tree checked out. It is on private property, so it's not in the right of way. It isn't something that we would have normally gone out and looked at. But nonetheless, so that's a tree again. As you can tell, yes, it is about as high as that roof on that porch. The diameter on this tree was 53 inches, probably the scariest diameter I've ever taken in my life as I was getting up under that tree, and you'll see here in a second. So once again, 53-inch DBH, it was 45 not feet, inches at 16 feet. That was the end of it. So we've known, and I think I've known, and a lot of arborists that I talk to in town know that the red oak group has had problems. Different diseases, a combination of diseases, sudden oak death, that sort of thing. You can see my diameter tape there, that little blue diameter tape right there. This right there, that whole flare of that tree was probably an average of 9.5 feet. Just to give you a good idea. We're going to take questions in the end if you can hold those into. What's that? So this was most likely, I was looking at the leaves. I'm pretty sure it's just a northern red oak. It could have been a little bit hybrid. I did see some southern in there as well. So, but for the most part, I think it was a northern red oak. I actually climbed in that hole, and you could not see my body. So that's how big that hole was. When the homeowner reached out to me, and he was like, "Hey, I got this tree. It's been in my right of way for a while. I need this removed." And I was gonna push this tree off onto our city arborist, and then I was just like, well, I pulled it up on Google Maps. I was like, well, it just looks like a tree. And then he sent me a picture of him standing inside of the tree. And then I was like, no, I think I need to go out and look at this one. So I went out, looked at it, did a bunch of measurements on it, was pretty much amazed at it. If you'll notice, right here was the only living part of that tree. If you look on Google Maps, it has a full crown. So this little bit of root zone was actually holding that tree and actually keeping that tree alive. Yeah, so pretty amazing. That was actually, I took that 2 weeks ago after I got that call. All right, so moving on. Here's another tree. This is one of my favorite trees. You know, I have my, when I came back from the storm, you know, after I helped clean up and cut some trees down, I went around and immediately started checking all my favorite trees in Asheville. This is one of my top 5 favorite trees. If you know where this is, so City Hall would be up here, and City Hall parking would be up here. That's the Marjorie Street lot. This is the motor pool lot down below. This is the hackberry. You know, and prior to finding this hackberry in the city, you know, most hackberries I saw were 12, 14 inches, weren't very big, usually single stem. So this one was, you know, certainly a specimen. If you'll notice right here, it's a tire. Someone parked their car underneath that tree during the storm. So I specifically did not show the car underneath the tree, you know, just because I wanted to respect whoever's car that was, because I felt extremely bad that happened. But nonetheless, that tree sat there for a while before we were able to get it cut up. This is that tree. This is a Google Earth image or Google Maps image. So you could see that crown of that tree was just, it was enormous for a hackberry. It took up a lot of area. It pretty much took up that whole hillside right there. If you notice that car right there, that's the car that was underneath the tree. So why they parked it underneath that tree during that storm, I don't know, but they did. But certainly, you know, my heart goes out to those folks. All right, moving right along. Richmond Hill. Has anybody been up to Richmond Hill lately? Fantastic, fantastic. What's it look like? Pretty bad, right? Yeah. So I was, you know, as I was kind of going through the process, going in meetings, I had heard that Richmond Hill got hit really bad. And so I was like, okay, I need to take a drive out there, see what it's like. Called up the city arborist, see if he can go. He couldn't go, decided to just take 20 minutes to go out there. End up spending about 30 minutes. Saw images like this. I want you to be thinking about this images because I'm going to show you some change detection here a little bit that's going to kind of shore this up and kind of show you what really went on in Richmond Hill. So this was cutting. This was not done by the city. This was done by a few, I don't know what we would really call them. Yeah, I guess impatient people that wanted to get trails open as immediately as possible. This wasn't permitted by the parks or the city. It was just kind of done, and you know, we may not have known about it, but nonetheless, it happened anyway. Once again, this is just further up that trail from there, and it's just absolute devastation. This is on the Purple Trail. This would be real close to the armory would be back here. And then, you know, your parking area would kind of be over in this area right here. So, and my last slide, that's the trail going down from the shelter, okay? And this is, you know, after I saw this, you know, that's when I really started raising alarm to, you know, Parks and Rec and let them know. It was like, you know, it's absolutely complete devastation. I don't know why this park is open. I don't know why people are hiking here. You know, and it's not only the debris that has been piled up. All this debris was green when it fell. So when they cut it up, all they were doing is they were exposing the ends of these logs, and they were just doing nothing but dripping sap, you know. And the first thing I'm thinking, sap burns. That's probably not a good thing. So we decided to go ahead and make the call to go ahead and shut the park down at that point until we can get a better plan going. And, you know, today it's still closed, and we're trying to figure out through our debris cleanup folks how we're going to handle it going forward. So this is that change detection that Dr. Steve mentioned here a little bit ago. It doesn't necessarily look like a lot. This big block right here would be Richmond Hill. That's the this is the armory down here. That's the parking lot for Richmond Hill. This is that photograph we just looked at. So every place that you see the magenta, an event or an intense event happened. And that's the way that the folks who gave me this photo, this was provided to us by Skytech, Chris Fleming, who lives out in Hawk Creek. This was no cost to the city. They completely did this just to help us out, gather a big picture, and have something to show to you all tonight. Obviously, these are the change detection is really intense here. So this was a lot of sedimentation. This is leaf. You called it leaf stripping. Leaf stripping. Yeah. I was going to call it defoliation, but leaf stripping is better. I like leaf stripping. And pretty much anywhere you see magenta, it's either trees are down or there has been leaf stripping going on. So pretty much, it affected the whole park. There's different areas like the lighter pink right here would be leaf stripping. Any place where we have the darker areas, that's where we had a lot of blowdown. So we still have a lot of work to do in here. Obviously, this was a priority. This whole area, 5 minutes. Okay, fantastic. So we still have a lot of work to do in there. All right, moving right along. Holt Lane. All right, here's the good stuff. All right, Holt Lane. So I want you to pay very particular attention to that home right there and that area up there. It's going to make a little bit more sense. So I'm just going to let that burn into you here for a little second. Boom. So this was done by actually our inventory consultant. They came in and flew drone flyovers for us just of this area. They were just doing a demo test site for us. Once again, that is that home that I told you about to look for, and that is where that kind of dirt area was. This was pretty much, this is everything right here is steep slopes. Everything up in here is Buncombe County. So this is all Buncombe County blowdown. When the drone pilot took his headset off after he flew this flight right here, he took it off and he was like, this is what 60 to 65% crown loss looks like. This is Biltmore Park. This is Holt Lane. Yep, this is Holt Lane. So an infrared image on it, essentially, everything you see red is things that survived the storm. So as you can tell right here, this is that home I told you to look at. Lots of blowdown here. There were some, trees that made it. What they didn't cut down in the neighborhood, there was, different lawns and that sort of thing. Major replanting were going forward in this neighborhood. So they also flew some LiDAR imaging. This is just a screen capture. This is a 3D image. I guess it looks sort of 3D. So this, once again, that's that house that I was talking about, looking northwest up the slope, and just kind of all the devastation. After I looked at 3D image, man, I was able to get really close and really detailed, with the assessment when we were kind of looking at the damage up in here. This is that dirt area that was at the top of the hill. Once again, this is just kind of blow down, give you a little scale of kind of what things look like in that area. I think this is more indicative of what we saw in Webb Cove. Where we lost, we had a lot of blowdown and that sort of thing. So, all right, focus. So what I've been working on, Helene. So Helene is pretty much taking all my time. We have put the urban forest master plan on hold. If you want to get involved in what we're doing, a place that you can see updates on how the city is cleaning up, what we're doing, that Asheville Recovers public input page is where you want to go. You can also leave comments there. So if you want to see a certain thing or, hey, I got this or that, all these comments are posted on there. They stay on there. They become public information. And then we will group those and we will take those back to our recovery teams, which the city has put together. And that's a, conglomeration of different departments who have a certain interest. I got put on the debris team, the cleanup team, and also got put on the natural resources team. Urban Forest Master Plan, like I said, it's kind of on hold, but we're going to get it restarted real soon because it definitely applies to this situation. We've also done some programming and planning, and that's through these resource support groups, which we'll hear more about in a couple months here, or at least a month, and then a lot of engagement, a lot of correspondence. Obviously, I put my email up there, my phone number. You're more than welcome to call me anytime you want. You got a concern, that sort of thing. I like talking to people, and will gladly share information when I have it. Priorities, next 188 days. Does anybody know what happens in 108 days? No, but good guess. So at the end of March, actually, FEMA, 180 days is FEMA's reimbursement, except for that's category A. I don't want to go into the categories right now because it's a whole nother world. 108 days is Arbor Day. It's National Arbor Day. So this is a personal timeline that I'm setting for myself to get things on the ground, get some programs going, get some replanting. We're going to focus on pollinator seed. We're also going to focus on some live staking as well as some bare roots. All right, so I probably don't have enough time. Where am I at? Yeah, so this was pretty much FEMA stuff. Hangers, leaners, stumps. This is essentially, what gets cleaned up in our parks and on our public land. Tree forest assessments, we're doing those every day. Seeding and staking, I already talked a little bit about that. Restart the urban forest master plan, big time. I mean, why we're not doing it, I don't know, but it's a lot about getting back to a little bit of normalcy as well. And then I want to celebrate Arbor Day, and after Arbor Day, we're going to pause and plan, and sit back and kind of sleep maybe a little bit. All right. So where are we at? Fantastic. Does anybody know what kind of trees those are? Very good. So after I turned around from that big tree, I actually saw these trees first. This is the second and third largest sassafras I've ever seen in my life. So I saw 1, 2, and 3 all in the same area. That's all I got for you.
All right, folks, we hanging in there? Okay, good. We love our trees. We're not so sad. We're a little sad. We're very sad. I know we're sad. But I'm going to focus on action and how to get involved and how to save your trees that are still standing and not be afraid of trees if possible, or not totally. Okay, so I work for a nonprofit organization called Adventure Scientists, and there's some brochures on the front table about our work. I'll be talking about a little bit, but mostly I'm just going to talk about trees. So here we go. I think, let's see. What do you suggest?
I don't think that's online
Okay.
clicker, but
Okay, there we go.
there we go.
We're on it.
You basically scroll with the mouse.
Got it. Okay. I know we're over time also, so I'm going to be pretty fast, and understandable, hopefully. So I'm going to talk about why are forests important. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. What are some threats? How do we care for them? What about tree protection in our area? How can you get involved? Okay, so just quickly, ecosystem services, probably hear a lot about it depending on what crowd you're in. But we know that trees provide a lot of benefits. So let's remember that trees provide us a lot of benefits. We have a lot fewer trees now, so we need to plant more trees, actually. The answer is plant more trees. So they provide us direct things, they provide things for us, they support us through their cycling, they regulate our climate, right? So we're going to talk about the urban heat island. And they also have cultural services. So I actually do research on sacred forests, looking at culturally protected forests, but that's a different talk. Oh, and of course, let's not forget our stormwater management, right? So right now, this is top of mind, but we really need to be focusing on our stormwater management. Here's another graphic of what trees provide to us. And when we have healthy habitats, it contributes to climate resilience. When we have unvegetated slopes, we're more likely to have landslides. We use this word urban canopy a lot, and I know we're among tree people here, so maybe everybody knows what crown is or canopy. But basically, we're talking about the treetops, right? If you had an aerial view, like you see the trees, or you don't see the trees. And it provides us a lot of good things, especially in a city. So we've heard about the Forest Service, but we really need to focus in on our trees in our area. So homes for animals, cools the air, reduces flooding, captures air pollution, and provides spiritual health and good feelings for us. Okay, urban heat island, right? So urban areas are hotter than non-urban areas, than vegetated areas. And so if we have more forest canopy or more trees in the city is cooler. And here's a graphic. I mean, I think we know this, and on some level we feel it, but we've lost a lot of trees, as we've just seen. And so will our city and region's temperature rise post-Helene? Probably. So you can see the downtown area is hotter, and then as you move out to more vegetated areas, it's cooler, both mostly more extreme during the day, but also at night. So a couple of years ago, some really fabulous UNC Asheville students did a study about urban heat island and rising temperatures in cities. And they measured the temperature at Carrier Park, summer 2023, 87 on the field with grass and trees, and then 91 at the velodrome. So it's really a public health issue, having this hot temperatures in cities. And it affects older people, people with chronic illnesses more. But if we have more tree cover, we're going to have cooler temperatures and spend less money on energy. So the most at risk are this whole list of pre-existing conditions. And Asheville Greenworks, I want to give a shout out. They did an urban heat study, and there was actually one before that too. But now we need another one, right? Because we've lost so much of our canopy. So I'm not going to get into details, but you can find this through Greenworks, or you can ask some of us here in the room. We can get it to you. Okay, so let's talk about the storm impacts and solutions, right? So maybe 40% of trees in Buncombe County were damaged due to Hurricane Helene. A lot. You've seen the pictures. We're sad. And we're kind of scared of trees too, right? Because we all had, I want to acknowledge that we've all had a collective trauma, right? We all are suffering post-traumatic stress because we all had that trauma. And we're traumatized by trees, which is sad because we also love trees. Helene dropped a lot of water, and we're going to continue to have heat waves and storms, so we need to mitigate, or we need to take actions to address what we know is coming. And so the answer is green infrastructure, among other things. So green infrastructure is constructed wetlands, rain gardens like this in a median, or it could be in a parking lot. Fresh Market on Merriman has some of this, so shout out to them. Green roofs, berms, swales, and trees. These are all green. So basically, it's like the things that vegetation give us for free, but we have to plant it. And let's talk about storm water management and floodplains. We're ever more aware of where the floodplains are now. And basically the 100-year flood or 500-year, that's kind of out the window, right? Don't use that measurement, really. So I want to give a shout out to Conserving Carolina. They had restoration projects on 3 different floodplains, and they stored over 1.25 billion gallons of water during Helene. The top picture is a abandoned golf course that was restored. And so I would encourage us to think about, what can Asheville learn? What can Asheville implement going forward, Asheville and Western North Carolina? And how can we restore habitat to trap the future stormwater? And if you've driven along Amboy Road, you've gone by Carrier Park, I know everything's very sad, but look at the Karen Craig Nolan Park. It survived, right? So everything on either side is like scoured. That park's looks just the same. And that was a restoration project, right? That used to be a junkyard. And Riverlink, shout out to Riverlink, they, over many, many years, they removed all the trash, they did bioremediation, they planted plants to take up the chemicals, and they made berms, and they had vegetation, and it survived. Okay, we can take some examples from other places, right? Other places flood around the world. Other places have been through natural disasters and climate disasters. And Curitiba, Brazil is a great example. So this city, in the middle of the city, it flooded all the time. And it just kept causing damage and expensive damage. So they decided to turn toward green infrastructure and make it all a park area, basically for flood water retention. So over 3 years, they planted 140,000 trees. And so they made mini forests around the city, and then they had this huge area that was just committed to parkland. And they had all these criteria for planting street trees, which we have some criteria here in Asheville, but you could see the kinds of things they were looking for. So that's a great example. Fargo, North Dakota is another really interesting example. So I think in the coming months, we can learn from other places. All right, what about my tree? Right, so everybody's got their favorite trees. Love a favorite tree. We need trees. So if you have a tree, like if your tree is looking great and it survived the storm, wow, way to go tree. Don't cut it down, please, right? If your tree like had the top cracked off, or it's hanging, right, like one's leaning against another tree, all right, that needs to be looked at. So you need to contact a qualified arborist. Please do your research, find out if they're qualified. Don't just hire anybody that's the cheapest. Are there any qualified arborists in the room? And if so, raise your hand if you're willing. Oh no, what happened? Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I know people might not want to like have 10,000 questions after this, but basically it's not that hard to find a qualified arborist. I know everybody's really busy right now. But get some guidance, and maybe you want to make a management plan for your land, right? You can get advice about how to manage your property, and actually I would turn toward permaculture and use permaculture principles to manage water and flows on your land. So figure out how to capture and slow stormwater through planting native plants and trees that will absorb the stormwater. Especially in areas with bare soil right now, we need to be planting those areas. Live staking's great, but it could be bushes, it could be trees. We need to hold that bare soil. And Greenworks has a tree giveaway, or a tree sale and a tree giveaway twice a year. So Greenworks is a good go-to organization to get low-cost plants. Okay, remember, now we have all this. I mean, I'm so sad at how much amazing wood we have down, right? And unfortunately, we don't have like a ton of woodworkers and people making bourbon barrels able to get all this wood and use it. So we've lost like 200 and 300-year-old trees, a lot of oaks, and they're down. And we do have to worry about wildfires. So there is a program called FireWise, a nationwide program. If you're worried about wildfires in your immediate area, you might want to check with their guidance. But if your debris is far enough away from your house, it's supposed to be at least 30 feet, then leave those fallen trees on the ground to decompose, right? If they're touching the ground, they'll decompose more quickly. You don't want to have a huge debris pile with like small branches, because it would be prone to wildfires. But remember mushroom logs, right? We can make a lot of mushroom logs with the right kind of species and all that. So we do need habitat. We do need some of this in the environment. We just like have an overload right now. So the goal is to move from dendrophobia, right, fear of trees, to nemophilist, which is a tree lover. Yeah, hoping some new vocab words today. Okay, but don't we already protect trees in Asheville? Not a little bit. So I'm not going to get into it because we could have a really long conversation. 3 members of the Urban Forest Commission are here tonight. Not going to call them out, but they're here. Thank you for coming. So there is this Urban Forest Commission that is a group that gives input to City Council. And so I encourage you all to attend the meetings. They're open. Anybody can go to them. we do have a tree protection ordinance, but it's very limited. It needs to be strengthened, like 10 years ago. And Steve and I have been working on strengthening it for 10 years. So we have some controls on steep slopes over a certain elevation. There's a fee in lieu program. If a developer takes down a tree, they can pay to sort of offset that tree. But the ordinance is limited. So we can talk more about that later if you want. We have 2 tree-related employees at the city of Asheville. So Keith Aiken, you now know, yay. We worked for 10 years to get that urban forester position. So thank goodness we have it. And then we have a city arborist, Mark Foster. Their jobs are quite different. And I won't get into details. And then please get involved with the Urban Forest Master Plan. That was supposed to be launching right now, but as Keith said, it's on pause. But when it does launch, there will be public meetings, and we need you all to show up at the public meetings, right? So that we've never had an Urban Forest Master Plan, which means there's never been a plan on how we manage our forest in the city of Asheville. And we have some pockets of habitat left, but they're going by the month, right? And we have all these developers who want to put houses on the last bits of urban forest. But we do need to keep that canopy. Lots of other cities are doing really cool thcan So like Trees Louisville, Trees Knoxville, Trees Charlotte, and Casey Trees in Washington, D.C. So if you're curious to learn about what are other cities doing, what can we learn from them? Look to these folks. All right, so how can you get involved more? The Tree Protection Task Force, which was mentioned, I'm a co-chair. It meets once a month, and it's just a bunch of volunteers, and we provide input to the Urban Forest Commission, who then provides input to City Council. And we do things like propose new language for the tree ordinance. We also have a fallen trees database that we put together after the storm because we're trying to document how many trees we lost. I realize some homeowners lost like 100, so that's too many really for the database. But if you lost 1 or 2, we're having people put in the species and the diameter at breast height just so we can try to have some kind of data. So I can get that survey to you if you want. Our next Tree Protection Task Force meeting is on January 27th. It's both in person and online. And let me know if you want to be on the mailing list for that. Come up to the Urban Forest Commission meetings. They were on the first Tuesday monthly at 1 p.m., but all of this is announced on the city website. I believe the commissions are on pause for a moment due to the storm, but it's all advertised on the city website. And then you can nominate a tree on your property to be a treasured tree. How many of you in the room have a treasured tree at your house? Yay! Okay, good, yay. And I've been around to look for some of these, and they're standing, so I'm so happy. So these are any tree. We have these brochures. Pat, will you raise your hand? Pat has a whole bunch of brochures if you need another one. So basically, if you have a tree that you love on your property that's a native species and in decent health, you just nominate it through our website. It's through Greenworks, and then we'll come bring you a plaque and a certificate, and we'll sort of on your tree for you. And it's a method of stewardship. It's not legally binding, although we tried to get it in the Asheville Tree Ordinance that the treasured trees would be protected, but unfortunately that was edited out at the last minute. Boo. So we'll try again. And actually, Keith's picture of the sassafras made me think about the Champion Tree Program or the Heritage Tree Program, which are 2 totally different programs. But Treasured Trees is here in Asheville, and it's just sort of like a feel-good thing. Okay, and then my last call for involvement is through citizen science. And this is a project through my job, which is called Tracking Eastern Hemlocks. How many of you use either eBird or iNaturalist? Yeah, I thought this group would probably have some. Okay, so those are examples of citizen science. The group is called Adventure Scientists, and we have different projects every year. And one of our projects is called Tree Tracking. So we pick a different species of tree every year, and then we have volunteers go out and find that tree and do document it with a phone app. And the phone app we're using for this one is called Tree Snap. The project launches next week, January 15th. Get psyched. I'm sure we all love hemlocks. And I'm sure we're all aware of Hemlock woolly adelgid, right? So what we're looking for in national forests, so it's going to be in Pisgah, Nantahala. Actually, it's in 6 states. So it's in national forests across 6 states in case you're traveling and you want to check out some hemlocks in West Virginia. So you're going to go into the national forest, and you're going to hike way in, and you're going to see if you can find a candidate lingering hemlock. So this is a hemlock that has resisted the woolly adelgid infestation and might be genetically resistant. And then we're working with NC State and Hemlock Restoration Initiative and all kinds of other organizations to breed the potentially genetically resistant hemlocks, and then we can plant them later. This is like a multi-year project. But our season is only January 15th to March 31st, and we're having a webinar on January 15th, and you can, using the QR code, you can sign up for the project, and you can also come to our webinar. And I've got stickers and info about that if you want to see me afterwards. I also want to mention the North Carolina Urban Forest Council. They have this great tree owner's manual. If you're trying to figure out, like, how do I prune my tree correctly? What month of the year should I prune my tree? And they have an annual conference too, which was the Wednesday before the storm. Chris and I were at that in Hickory. And it's just a great way to look at urban forest management and care, so we don't want to overlook our city trees. They're very important. Y'all, we love the Lorax, right? We got to care. All right, so I want you to think about what concerns you the most about trees in Asheville, and we're going to have some time for questions, and I appreciate your attention and your care.
All right, so we're going to open for a Q&A. We have some online, and to let you know, we have like 270 people online. Is that incredible? Yeah. I do want to let you know the U.S. Forest Service invites the public to gather firewood for personal use without a permit on the reopened section of Pisgah National Forest. So they want your help to try to prevent fire. So please do that. I'm going to start out with the first question, and I think Allison was very diplomatic, but I'm very concerned about this fee in lieu, that a developer can come in and clear cut and just plunk down some money and like say pay. What other places, my understanding from Allison is that if you take a tree down, you've got to plant 2 trees. So I'd like to, would you guys come up, Dr. Steve and Keith and
Gosh. Well, that's not an easy first question. And I mean, we could talk about this for like 2 hours, and you don't want us to, trust me. The fee in lieu is better than nothing. Before we had nothing, right? We had nothing. Now at least developers have to pay an amount, and then that can be used later in the same general area. So in my opinion, no, it's not great, but it was a great accomplishment to have this program existing. It's way more complicated. I don't know if Keith wants to say anything about it, but I almost feel like we should just move on to the next question. Do you want to say anything about it, Keith? It's kind of a hot potato. Yeah. Let's sideline that for a separate conversation. We'd love to get into the weeds with you about that. That's only for commercial. So we don't have anything for private. We have very little for your individual homes, right? Like, so I'm just not, that's like, some ordinance stuff is really hard.
Allison, I've got a question from online. A teacher, Nicole Washman, would like to know if you would be willing to share your slides with her. She's teaching.
Of course.
Same stuff.
Just give me their email.
Okay.
Yep.
I have 2 questions. One is, how well does live staking work? What percentage? And then the other one is, what do you mean by people are afraid of trees? I don't quite get what you.
Oh, y'all, some of you are afraid, right? If you had a tree fall on your house during the storm,
That kind of, okay.
yeah, I mean, or your car, you lost your whole, I know, I feel it, the wind, like right this past week, right? The wind blows and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to lose another tree. I love trees, y'all. I'm sure you know this, but I want to acknowledge that we've been through a trauma. And so a lot of people are proactively cutting their trees right now because they're afraid. And that is, the tree survived, y'all. So when you're talking to your neighbors in a nice way, you say, well, if that tree survived a 500-year storm or whatever, it's probably going to be okay, unless it's hanging, right? So talk to an arborist.
Another question from online. I want to ask each of you to respond to this. what species of trees do you recommend for replanting?
Oh, wait a second. We didn't answer the live staking question, which I feel like Steve should answer. No. Okay. Yeah. Okay, Keith. I've got an opinion, but.
Yeah, so live staking is essentially literally just taking a cutting from a plant, usually a riparian species do best, and then just jamming that stick down in the ground, and it'll sprout roots and it'll grow. I've been very successful doing it on my own property with silky dogwood as well as sycamore. So those two work really well. There are a lot of other different species that work as well with live staking. But yeah, it's probably the easiest way to propagate a plant, and it costs nothing.
Do you have a live staking comment or another question?
I've only done it in very thick clay and hard pan, so I would say the better the soil or maybe even sand for certain species, I would say it would probably take. It really depends on how much organic material is in that sand. Yeah, go ahead.
All of this and that other question you just asked, it's right plant, right place, right? And native plants, please, people. So live staking is only going to work with wetland or water loving species. River cane would work, but you got to think about, please, when you plant, think 5 to 10 years out. How big is this plant going to be in 5 to 10 years? People overplant all the time. And elderberry would work too, but only certain species will work for live staking. So don't just start cutting random things and stick it in the ground. It's not going to work. And then favorite tree for replanting, again, depends on the place, depends on how much sun you have, depends on the slope you're putting it in, depends on what size you're going for. Do you want an understory or a big tree? You know, so that's like really personal. But there, you know, we have a lot of master naturalists and master gardeners in the room, I'm sure. So those folks will help you make the right decision. And of course, the Native Plant Society. But do you want to say your favorite tree? I mean, to that question or for planting? I know.
So I've been telling a lot of people bald cypress and black gum are probably my two biggest ones right now that I'm putting out there.
I will say a tree that no one will agree on, and that's a black walnut tree. And the reason is, everyone knows they're terribly dirty trees and everything, but they're absolutely beautiful. I have like a 6-story black walnut tree in my tiny little backyard. Everyone thinks native plants don't like them, and that's just false. And they feed the squirrels, they feed the hawks, and it humbles you. It makes you remember that you're part of the Southern Appalachians. So I love black walnut trees.
A question about oaks. You were implying that red oaks and that there's a lot of rot. Are oaks not good to replant?
Oh, no, by all means. You know, that is just one group that seems to be struggling the most. So we, you know, certainly aren't saying don't plant any oaks. There's plenty of good oaks that we should still be planting. White oaks are still good. You can plant red oaks, by all means. You know, it's just something that you're going to have to think about maintenance wise as time goes on, and make sure that you're doing, you know, getting them checked out by an arborist.
Yes, I have a question for Steve. So, Steve, right? I'm asking it. Steve, that your talk was excellent, and your slides were just terrific. And I know that down the road they're going to be used by a number of different groups. But my first question for you is, who within USDA is paying attention to that?
Oh, everybody, I think, who, I mean, there's a lot going on. USDA is a huge organization. I mean, we share a lot. We do a lot of outreach. We're constantly working with the National Forest, the region, NGOs in the state on all of these forest disturbance issues. People want to know what's going on with their forest, and our work is a type of monitoring that's used in planning and also for early, rapid response. And that's the initial motivation for this a few months ago.
Is it me? I just have a couple comments. I take care of about 26 acres, mostly wooded, and I hold the deed to about 12 and a half. There are many, many young trees, many young trees that the Great Mother has already planted. And there are teenagers and just a lot of flexible trees that will come out from under pileups. If you're just slightly patient, they're like yoginis. Um, and you can get them out with no injury. And sometimes with just somebody with a chainsaw can help you get out a bigger tree that's just bowed over, that's still in perfect health. So not to worry so much if you do have a woodland, that there is an understory, and also some trees that are only like a few inches tall that did keep their leaves, so you could see them quite late in the fall, and just oodles and oodles of oaks and things. And also just one more comment, I don't know if the tulip poplars were largely saved because they had already dropped their leaves. In Fairview, where I live, they were saved because of that, I think. And the ones that we lost a lot of pines, of course, and we lost a lot of southern red oaks. And the white oaks, of course, they still had their leaves, and we lost many of those tragically.
I want to say something about the spring. Thank you for your comment. Yes, there's a seed bank in the soil and we have saplings. Well, we need to be, so as Steve said, we're not really going to know everything until like April, May, and then it's going to be like, oh, wow, okay. But the invasive species are going to be out like crazy. So, yes, there's a great seed bank and you've got saplings around, but also, like Tree of Heaven is going to be all over the place. Bittersweet, Japanese knotweed. So remember, all the choices we're making are management. Whether we do nothing or whether we do something, it's all management. So do kind of get to know your land, and walk your land, and then ask for a friend for help. But we're going to have to be extra on it this spring. Yeah. Okay, Steve in the back.
Hi, I live on Elk Mountain Scenic Highway, so I'm very concerned about this issue that was brought up a couple of times with regard to fire. And I wondered if maybe Dr. Steve could give us his prognosis on upcoming fire seasons, and if you've had an opportunity to look at some analog sites that have had hurricane damage as extensive as ours.
We live in the Southern Alps and we know that we have a fire issue regardless of the hurricane, right? 2016 proved that to any doubters. All of a sudden, there's two major things that have changed. The fuel's changed. A lot of our fires is carried by leaf litter. Every year there's a fire hazard because of the leaf litter that comes in the fall. It lasts until the spring. We don't have that much fire in the summer generally because the canopy's greened up. There's a lot of humidity. But in the spring and the fall especially, we can think of every year as having a fire season of concern. Well, now there's a lot of brush, tops of trees that are down in some places like where you're at. It's possible to have some fires that are hard to suppress, that we used to be able to suppress a little easier because two reasons. One, there's more fuel and you can have embers that make the fire spread a little bit quicker. And also it's harder to get a firefighter in there safely, right? And that's a major value we have. And so it could affect the complexity of response in ways that make certain fire suppression kind of hard, wildfire suppression kind of hard. What you need to do is make sure that you minimize the fuel around your home, get it down on the ground so the number of years it's there be less. Even after, in 5 years, all those logs that are there, if there's a fire that comes through, it's going to produce a ridiculous amount of smoke for us compared to normal, compared to the past. And if it's like 2016, if we have those conditions again and these fires just get in there, and they can be a long ways away. We had smoke from South Mountain and Table Rock in Asheville in fall of 2016. We got smoke from way to the west of us as well, and it can go a long ways, and this blowdown area is huge. So there's the safety concern around your home you can do your best to manage, and also think about this broader scale concern that
Yeah,
we're gonna have
I
to
just look at all these trees down, they're huge, and it
Yeah.
seems like a fire could burn for a significant period of time.
Yeah, the fire, a typical fire, it will pass and it won't be taking on that log. That requires extreme drought, and if it burns, it's smoldering for the days and even weeks afterwards maybe. But the actual fire spread is usually the leaf litter and the finer twigs, the finer fuels, the shrubs, the mountain laurel, the white pine that's quite often in the understory in places around there. On those south-facing slopes, you have drier species and a higher fire risk naturally. And that quite often is what got hit worse, where the fuels have changed now, where the canopy's not there to slow the wind speed. It is a major concern. And, we have small local solutions that can help. But, in the big picture, it's like, boy, it's a huge concern.
Want to remind you, to please wait for the mic so that the 200 people online can hear your questions. And while we're waiting for the next person, another comment from online is the North Carolina State Extension Office, their website has a tree finder based on your location, based on your conditions. So try that website.
And I have a commercial for the Master Gardeners. They have if you're interested in natives, they have an absolutely awesome pamphlet that covers trees, shrubs, vines. It tells you how much water it needs, temperature it needs, zones, all that stuff. It's a really great handout to just cover all kinds of natives. So if you're interested in that, you can call the Master Gardeners, the Buncombe County Master Gardeners, or stop by the Extension Office on Mount Carmel Road.
I know the city has hired a company to pick up debris, and I'm wondering if there's a place you can go to look at a schedule as to when they will be picking up debris on, major roads.
So yeah, if you go to that website that I posted, publicinput.org/Asheville recovers, and that's going to take you to our public facing page that has all that information on it.
Say it one more time. Public.
I believe it's publicinput.org/Asheville recovers. And even if you just Google that will probably come up as well. So that's going to, give you those areas. They're still only doing it by zone. So we don't do it street by street. They don't do it street by street. So, but they can at least tell you what zone they'll be working in that day.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, both for your hard work, and it's clear how much your heart is really in this. This is my first time at a meeting, and so some of the language I wasn't familiar with. But one question I have is, one thing that's made me sad is I haven't heard work in general around some of the things that are doing a lot of harm to soil, to pollinators, like leaf blowing and use of pesticides, and which I've even seen at the Southern Research Center. And just wondering if there's any, I know there's some cities, I think, that have like banned leaf blowing, things that are just doing so much harm. And just wondering if there's any work around that in the, or related.
So, I haven't heard anything around leaf blowing. I have heard the issue before, and it's not something that we've ever taken up, or, brought, to planning or, city council or anything like that. So, they're all good ideas. It's something that we can definitely, as we go forward with the urban forest master plan, that's something, come to our public engagement periods, and bring those things up again. And also, once again, that publicinput.org that I just mentioned, you can go and actually submit a comment there. Submit a comment, exactly what you just said right there. It'll get logged. It'll be thrown into a group of questions and comments, and then those will be shared with all the resource groups as well. So it'll just capture that and make sure that we have it. So when the time does come to address it, we can do that adequately.
Another
Also, if you
comment
could-
from online. It says basically for good information on native trees to consider replanting around your homes in our region, search great trees for the landscape on the NC Arboretum's website. Yes, repeat that. To find good options for planting trees around your home, replanting, go to the North Carolina Arboretum's website and search great trees for the landscape.
More questions? I got one more idea. We really need a land trust for urban areas, right? We have Riverlink does river areas only, Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy does big areas, but right now we don't have any urban land trust for small urban forest areas. So if anyone wants to start a new nonprofit, that's the one we need right now. Yes, so what it would be is putting a conservation easement. Say there's like a 1 or 2 acre parcel, for example, on Ravenscroft Avenue, where there's a 1 acre parcel, or maybe it's 2. There was a Ravenscroft Reserve initiative about 5 years ago. And so that would be donated to a land trust that would then manage the land in a permanent conservation easement. We're losing all of our remaining urban forest quickly. So it's hard to get that back after it's gone. Yeah. Last comment or question? Online, we're good? Thanks. Are we done? All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Please come back next month, February 5th, for the top 10 reasons to be hopeful for our climate. I'll see you then. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. That was fun.
See you.
That fun?
Great, thank you.
We went over a little bit, but that's okay. Yes. Yeah, I noticed them back. Gary. I'm Drew. Yeah, oh, that's years ago. And I know Bart Matthew, Bart and some of your said process. I see. Okay. Go back with him and his wife in GIS. Thanks for your presentation. Is your presentation available? They all should be. Okay.